not just zombies.
But it's mostly zombies.
Yeah.
It's like, well, I mean, like 4 had horror aspects into it, and 6 did. 6 kind of got some of that in it. It's just like I think
It depends on who you play with. With Leon, it did.
Leon, it did. Jake was kind of an action sort of thing, almost sneak, in some ways.
Yeah.
Ada was definitely action and stuff. Chris was full. Actually, no, Chris was full blown action.
Ada was more sneak
Stealth.
action.
And actually, Jake, I don't really know what to say for that one.
That was like action as well.
Chris was full blown, like
Yeah.
guns firing, Call of Duty sort of stuff going on.
Giant monsters and
Yeah.
a whole bunch of crap.
And Leon was horror based, which I liked that. That's why I liked Leon's story the best, because it actually had zombies involved with it.
I mean, I liked them all. I'm not.
I didn't
too
like-
big to judge.
I liked Leon's.
I like shooting things. Okay.
Well, so do I, but I liked the horror aspect of it. Like, I liked Leon's story. Chris's was okay. It was my least favorite, actually. Yeah,
Chris was enjoyable though because like the way we made it, like beating that freaking monster with just a knife.
Yeah. The one I didn't like part was in Jake and what's her name's story.
The president's daughter.
It wasn't. No, it wasn't.
No,
We
it
found out it wasn't because. But I didn't like his one because he had there was that scene where we got captured and we were put in these hospital beds and we were trying to find all the passcodes.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
And we
It was
couldn't-
all white.
Yeah, and we couldn't figure it out because
Yeah, we were beating the crap out of everyone, but we couldn't find the passcode.
and it like took a while and we were like, oh, okay. We had to do the whole 111, 112, but it was with symbols instead.
Mhm.
We finally figured it out. Ada's was kind of boring because it was the co-op was only Ada, and then
Yeah,
the
and then
second.
my character was completely useless.
Well,
I
actually,
couldn't even interact with anything.
Well, yeah, we swapped because it would be better for you to use Ada for the puzzles.
Look at him masturbating the air.
But out of all the Resident Evils, I would have to say 4 is my favorite. It's
Yeah.
despite those terrible
It's
fact-
just got a nostalgia factor to
Yeah.
it that's just really enjoyable.
It's
and it's
despite-
a unique game.
despite the whole the president's daughter thing, it's still one of my favorites. After that, I would actually have to say Revelations 1 was actually pretty
I'm gonna
fun.
have to say 7's my favorite.
Oh yeah, I forgot 7. 4, then 7, then Revelations 2. Because Revelations 2 kind of had a lot of horror aspects to it.
Yeah.
Not 2, 1. Revelations 2 kind of...
I liked 2 actually.
Revelations
Besides the
2?
freaking daughter part where you play as the, or not daughter, but
The little kid?
girl. Yeah.
After Revelations 1, I would say 3. I like 3.
3 is hard, dude.
1 was good, and then 2. I think my least favorite is 5, actually.
Yeah, that's a lot of people's least favorite. It's probably even my least favorite, but no, my least favorite is Code Veronica.
Oh yeah, then you see there was a glitch that can... a thing that
You'd
can...
have to restart.
Or not
the
a
game.
glitch, but it's more like a mistake that if you mess it up.
Yeah, if you don't get a certain item before you go a certain place, you have to restart the whole game if you save.
That is so stupid. It's like... What were they thinking when they did that?
They probably didn't realize it until they released the game.
Well, they have the
People
HD
complain about it.
version. They might have fixed the HD version.
Yeah, maybe.
I'll have to look up what that is, so that way if we ever do that,
And I'll protect parental with my life.
we... That time, next time we do play that game again, we know not to mess that part up. Is that what Chaz said and he hated that one?
Yeah, I told him about Code Veronica and how we're playing it, or did play it a little bit. He's like, oh, you gotta pay attention to this certain part, or else you'll mess up the whole game. I'm like, oh god.
Yeah,
And
see,
it was something with a fire hydrant or something.
the thing is, I think I actually didn't grab it. The thing is, we're going to be starting it over anyway, so it's fine.
We can always look it up.
And also, but it's on the Dreamcast, so... Dreamcast had a terrible controller.
I don't think so.
It was too freaking big. It was like
It's
the...
kind of like the Xbox controller, the big Xbox controller.
Yeah, but that one was too big as well.
Yeah, but it's not terrible. It's not the worst.
I
ever.
think it's one of the worst controllers.
No.
The worst controller is the N64 controller.
that you've ever used.
You don't like the N60. You like the N64 controller.
It's not terrible compared to the Intellivision.
I'm talking about. Okay, I'm talking about the ones I've. Hold on. Don't say it.
I don't know what you mean. All I heard was.
Shut up. But no, for me, the worst controller is N64. Then after that is the Dreamcast. Then the Xbox original.
Buy the Dreamcast controller.
Then the original Xbox. Then the Sega Genesis controller, and then
Genesis.
and then the.
Wasn't that kind of like the Xbox controller? Same kind of shape.
No, completely different. And then after that.
Picture.
All right, hold on. And then the fifth one would be the Wii remotes. I hated those for some reason.
Yeah, the Wii remotes were annoying because you had to point them like directly at that freaking thing.
All right, let's see here.
And if even the tiniest piece of paper was in the way, it screwed it all up.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a cool idea, but it wasn't executed.
It worked with some games, not all of them.
Like the Dragon Ball Z game did not work with it.
Oh, I can't believe I bought Dead Rising for the Wii.
Huh.
We played it a little bit and we hated it, so I bought it for the.
Because it was so hard to control.
But now I bought it for the Xbox One. All right, so let's see. This is the Genesis controller.
Oh yeah.
I didn't like it because, see, if you look at it, hold on. It's got a weird shape, but see, you have. Hold on, where is it?
Don't you have like 6 buttons in a row?
Yeah, like there's 2 versions of it. There's that version, which the original version, which has the D-pad, 3 buttons, which if I can remember correctly are A, B, and C for some reason, and then one start button on the top, and then no trigger buttons. Then after Nintendo released theirs, because the Genesis released first, Nintendo had the trigger buttons, and they just had A, B, and X and Y, and then that was it. Then and then the start and pause, basically, or start and options or whatever. After that, then Sega released theirs, which had that trigger buttons, 2 pause buttons, a switch which allowed you to put on a mode or something. I don't know what it was. And then instead of adding just...
So it got a little too complicated.
Yeah, but then instead of adding just one more button and calling it, like, having like 2 buttons on top, 2 on bottom, they decided to add 3 more buttons and call it X, Y, Z, A, B, C. Like, that's just more confusing. That's why I didn't like it. Because all the later versions had that. But the Atari Jaguar controller.
Yeah, that had a bad controller too, right?
Yeah. Well, let me look it up here. This was the controller for the Atari Jaguar. Look at this thing.
Look at the Intellivision controller.
How would you play with that?
I have no
idea. It did the same thing that it took it's literally the Sega Genesis controller with a remote control in the center. Like, look, you have the D-pad, the pause and option menu, and ZYX, CBA. They just swapped it, which makes it more confusing. And then added a freaking huge ass remote control in this bottom. Like, this is literally it has all the numbers for it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 0, and pound sign. It's literally, actually, it's a cell phone. Like, why? And I understand why they swapped the letters on the top, because they didn't want to get sued by Sega, because at the time the copyrights for video games were very shaky because people didn't know what they could get away with or not. Now that they understand it now, it's a bit different.
Yeah.
So they swapped things, and it just makes it more confusing. So, like, if you went from a Genesis to an Atari, you'd be completely confused. Then they made a smaller version, which got rid of 3 buttons. It just says CBA, pause, start. This is the analog now. It was a dial thing. instead of a D-pad, you spun it around. And they kept the god-awful cell phone part.
Look up the Intellivision controller.
Also, someone tried to make a mock-up of what it could look like if they did it better.
Move your arm. Well,
I mean, it's still confusing, but
yeah,
it's a lot
not
better.
Terrible.
Alright, continue with that, by the way. Don't freaking keep, like... Alright, this is the Intellivision controller.
Yeah.
That big thing in the middle, that's an analog stick.
Yeah.
You would just go like this and press buttons. The best controller ever for Atari was the original one. Because all it is a joystick. All you had to do was press a button to have an activation thing and move your character around like that.
Yeah. And then sometimes press the button to do an action.
Yeah, it's so simple. How did they go from that to Jaguar? And
Because there was a point in time where they thought more buttons made
it actually,
better.
yeah, that was sort of a deal where more buttons were added on. Like, well,
And then it got too complicated and people started freaking out.
well, see, the thing is with the NES was like, see, Atari did it simple. Then Intellivision and Coleco and all these other companies that were coming out were trying to make it more complex. And then Nintendo was like, you know what? We need just the pause button, the start button, 2 buttons for actions, and a D-pad. That's all you need.
Mm-hmm.
And then for when we get to the Super Nintendo, okay, add trigger buttons. This is for like fighters and other arcade games to come, which had those abilities. And then add an extra 2 buttons for certain other commands. And then that's it. Then the N64 came. The N64 had a lot of buttons on it. It made it really confusing when you look at it. Like, if I were to look at it now, it would look confusing because, like, you had the D-pad, you had the A/B button here, then you had another.
It doesn't confuse me too much because I'm
then
used to it.
Well, yeah, but like you had another D-pad, 2 trigger buttons, and a 1 in the middle. The analog stick there, and a start in the middle. I personally think the GameCube controller was their best one
Yes.
because the GameCube controller was Nintendo's best controller because it had everything that you would really need. Your pause or start menu in the one. You wouldn't have 2, just 1 in there. B here, A there, the 2 triggers there, only 1 Z trigger there instead of having 2 Z triggers like every controller has now.
Well, they do that now because there's different guardians.
And then, well, it kind of had 2 analogs, just like this one, and that was a different thing. I don't know. It's just like it's something. Like when you look at the
Good
GameCube,
omen. Today will be a day filled with deja vu. You will see familiar sights, meet foods that you chased along the road. You can find a long lost friend. Take a moment to recall good memories.
like if you look at the GameCube controller, it looks confusing, but it's really not when you feel it. Anyway, I gotta end the episode because it's 28 minutes. Subscribe to do all the things that people, if you don't, we're gonna come and kill you. Goodbye.
What